Rolling, rolling, rolling.
You are live, Mayor Hudson.
Okay, thank you. Let's call to order the city council meeting for February 8th. Before we do the roll call, the city attorney has an announcement.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor and Council. Assembly Bill 361 suspends provisions of the Brown Act, allowing public meetings like this one to be held by teleconference in order to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. Mr. Mayor, please recognize me after the roll call and I will confirm certain matters for the record.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Armstrong,
Here.
Councilmember Perkins,
Here.
Councilmember Zafar,
Here.
Vice Mayor Veros,
Here.
and Mayor Hudson.
Here. Recognize the city attorney.
Thank you. And based on the responses to the roll call, please let the record reflect that all council members can hear the proceedings clearly. And if there are no objections, let the record further reflect that each council member believes, based on facial, voice recognition, or otherwise, that everyone that is representing themselves as council members are in fact council members. I see nods and no objection, so I'll turn the meeting back over to you, Mr. Mayor, and remind you that all votes must be taken by a roll call.
Okay, thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we are on to announcement. Are there any changes and additions to the agenda?
There are none this evening.
Okay, item 3.2, if you wish to speak under public comment or regarding an agenda item, please click the raise your hand button on your computer or *9 on your telephone to request to speak when public comment is being taken on the agenda item. You will then be unmuted when it is your turn to make your comment for up to 3 minutes. After the allotted time, you will then be remuted. Item 3.3, board, committee, and commission meetings. A complete list of upcoming meetings may be found on the city's website at www.sanramon, that's one word, .ca.gov. Subscription service is available at the link for automatic meeting notification. Contact the city clerk with questions 925-973-2539. Public comment is now open. At this time, the public is permitted to address the city council on items that are not on the consent calendar, including request to pull an item from the consent calendar. That's 5.1 through 5.6. A request for future agenda item and items that are not on the agenda and are within the city council's jurisdiction. Okay, I see one attendee already. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand. I'll read it again to give you a time to get through. If you wish to speak under public comment on this item, please use the raise your hand. Still only one. Feature on Zoom or dial *9 on your telephone. Still only one. Let's bring in two. All right, we have two attendees that wish to speak. Let's bring in Sarah first and then Subak.
Hello, City Council members. Hope you're all having a wonderful evening, and I hope that you guys can hear me okay. So my name is Sarah Lashenloo, and again, I am calling to request a future agenda item, and that is the, conversation around declaring a climate emergency. I know there's a lot going on your agendas and in your schedules, but trust me, you would activate a really big, strong community of residents if you just held that conversation in a future city council meeting. And that concludes my comment. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you, Sarah. Subak.
Hi there. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for your time. You may remember I'm a nurse that has lived in San Ramon for over 20 years and worked here as well at San Ramon Regional. And I am concerned about the preservation of the quality of life in this city. I kind of like living here. Establishing a climate emergency is a big statement. For San Ramon City Council, it is the city's responsibility to act on climate change. You've made some progress with contracts, thank you very much, with MCE and ACI. And there needs to be some more conscious action. San Ramon Valley Climate Coalition has collected over 120 signatures so far, with very little effort to send a message to the city council that we, the residents of San Ramon, want the city council to declare a climate emergency, and we want a sustainability task force. So we'd like to invite you that establish a climate emergency to let the residents of San Ramon know you will back up your words with action and join the 29 Bay Area cities and 7 Bay Area counties, including Contra Costa County, who have already made that declaration. Develop an interim cap until the revision of the current cap is complete and include community participation in a task force. And the consequences of delaying the city's declaration include further degradation of our local air quality with our current GHG plan, delay in moving forward to meet the 2023 cap proposals, and a decrease in the value of San Ramon's reputation as a leader in Contra Costa County. Thank you for your time, guys, and your consideration of my request.
Next speaker is Jim Blickenstaff.
Hello, Mayor and council members.
Yeah.
It's kind of ironic that I had those comments came before me because we've also been suffering under the auspices of a housing crisis. And actually, it's a climate crisis. It's a real serious burden for the rest of our futures. Housing crisis is almost a misnomer. It's a pretense to overdevelop. And there is affordable housing needs, but what ends up happening is market rate housing goes in for the developers, and then affordable housing takes a back seat, maybe 10, 15% of all the housing. In the meantime, we suffer from overbuilding. And there's a lot of pressure on the city from outside agencies with their own agenda to keep us overbuilding. There's a lot of money in it for certain groups, but it's a loser for San Ramon. And I see us at a juncture here of what our future is going to be in 15 or 20 years, because we've had that peaceful, residential, green space kind of city, very respected and admired by a lot of people that are tired of the overbuilt cities around the Bay Area. And now it looks like we're at a crossroads where we may end up being exactly one of those overbuilt cities if we proceed on the course we're on now. The example of that is a 85-foot building concept proposed on Bollinger and Camino Ramon. That is setting the stage for changing the very character of our city. It's in concept now, it's before the preliminary planning commission, et cetera, but it'll be coming to you. And it'll have a lot of sales pitch about how nice it is. But the reality is it sets the stage for other 85-foot buildings along Bollinger. And now we're turning Bollinger into Ignacio Valley or some other city, which we don't want to do. It's not part of San Ramon in that context of claustrophobic, too much traffic. And we have a lot of examples of failures of cities to stand up for their own needs. And I don't want to see that happen to San Ramon. So I'd like to put the thought out there that San Ramon has to get proactive and assertive about protecting their interests against these outside agendas, because time is running out. And if we start building 7-story buildings along Bollinger Canyon, the shade and claustrophobia of those buildings along Bollinger will be the fundamental change in the future of our city that I don't think anybody in San Ramon wants to see, but we have to fight to protect what we have, because otherwise we could be lost. Thank you very much.
Unbelievable timing, Jim. You've had practice, I can tell. Anyone else wish to speak up public comment? Seeing none, are there any written comments?
Not on this item, no.
Okay, let's close public comment on to consent calendar items. They are considered routine in nature and acted upon by the city council with a single action. Members of the audience wishing to provide public input may request hopefully by email or under item 4, public comment, that the city council remove the item from the consent calendar. I don't see any attendees wishing to pull anything. Does the city council have any reason to pull 5.1 through 5.6?
I will move 5.1 through 5.6.
I'll second.
Okay, motion Zafar, second Perkins. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Armstrong,
Yes.
Councilmember Perkins,
Yes.
Councilmember Zafar,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Barros,
Yes.
Mayor Hudson.
Yes, there are no special presentations tonight. Number 7, deferred consent items. There were none, as you just heard. City council appointments, there are none. Let's move to unfinished business. That's 9.1, which is resolution number 2022-21, designating Azalea Lane, Fuchsia Lane, Pearlgrass Lane, and Pearlgrass Court as permanent permit parking area R under the city's residential permit parking program, restricting parking without a permit. And PJ Duke, I believe you have the staff report.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I will do a screen share. All right. Thank you, Mayor Hudson, members of the council. Joining me tonight is our senior traffic engineer, Deborah Fear, and together we will present the Travari permit parking request. As quick background, the Travari community is located near the intersection of Crow Canyon Road and Doherty Road, with the Travari community situated to the north with 84 single-family homes consisting of 2-car garages and 2-car driveways. All of the roadways within the Travari community are public, including Azalea Lane, Fuchsia Lane, Pearlgrass Lane, and Pearlgrass Court. To the south, we have the Maravella community, which consists of 176 townhomes, each with a 2-car garage and no driveways, with the exception for 36 homes, which do have driveways. All of the roadways within the Maravella community are private, and there are 44 on-site guest parking spaces required, with 96 provided. Dividing the two communities is Red Willow Road. Red Willow Road is a public roadway with parking allowed on both sides of the street. In the summer of 2020, the city received a couple of complaints from the Travari community, which included that vehicles from the Maravella community were parking throughout the Travari neighborhood, leaving no parking for the Travari residents and visitors, that those vehicles were searching for on-street parking and possibly speeding within the community, that they raised pedestrian safety concerns with limited visibility at intersections and crosswalks due to vehicles parked at or within the curb ramps, and that there was difficulty placing garbage and recycling bins on the street for pickup or having garbage and recycling bins moved to accommodate parking, and the lack of street sweeping due to the constant on-street parking. After a series of public hearings and meetings with the HOAs, Transportation Advisory Committee, and the Policy Committee, we brought this item to the City Council on January 12, 2021. At that time, Council approved Resolution 2021-21, implementing temporary permit parking for Azalea Lane, Fuchsia Lane, Pearlgrass Lane, and Pearlgrass Court. The restrictions were from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. 7 days a week through January 31st, 2022, allowing staff a 12-month period to monitor and evaluate the temporary measure. This map details the temporary permit parking that has been in place for the past 12 months. The temporary permit parking does apply to all of the 84 residences within Travari. To give you a quick snapshot of the observations in the parking occupancy study, the first parking occupancy study was conducted prior to there being any temporary permit parking resolution. That was conducted in September 16 of 2020. After permit parking was implemented in January of 2021, staff conducted consistent observations through January 26th and June 26th of 2021, with 2 additional observations conducted on November 18th and 25th, 2021. All of the observations showed a consistent pattern with an overall parking reduction from about 93% occupancy to about 57% occupancy within the Travari community. Feedback from the police department was positive in that the enforcement was minimal, with a total of 15 citations issued during the first 2 months of the temporary measure and no additional citations issued for the remainder of the 10 months of the program. The parking occupancy data has been collected and displayed in this Excel spreadsheet. It has also been shared in the packet that is with you in further detail. There is a corresponding map that calls out the different zones, zones 1 being Red Willow Road, 2 through 7 actually being in Travari, and then zone 8 covering all of Mirabella. Here are some quick pictures to show you the before and after and the noticeable decrease in on-street parking. This is Azalea Lane, Pearlgrass Lane, Fuchsia Lane. And with that, based on our observations and feedback over the last 12 months, staff recommends the approval of Resolution 2022-21, designating permanent permit parking on Azalea, Fuchsia, Pearlgrass, and Pearlgrass Court. The permit parking restriction would remain the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 7 days a week. That concludes my presentation, and we will take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, do you have any questions of staff from the council before we open public comment? I'm looking around. Okay, Sabina.
Yeah, so I guess, PJ, my question is, where did these cars go? The before and after picture.
So from what we understand, the vehicles that have left, several things. There are some of them that have been placed in their driveways, whether those be at Travari or those be in the parking garages at Mirabella. We don't actually have a license plate survey where we can track the vehicle. We can only assume that they've gone into their garages or they found an alternate location. What I can tell you is we have not transferred the problem to another community.
Okay, Scott, and then Sridhar, and then Mark.
Interesting enough, I have a friend who lives in the Red Willow area, and they said they have seen people parking near the Red Willow Park and on the street. I think it's Coriander. That's right there. They have seen an increase in parking at that. We may want to consider parking restrictions, overnight parking restrictions at the park going forward, so people aren't parking there overnight. But that's not what we're here for tonight, but that's something to look at in the future.
Okay, Sridhar, you're first, then Mark.
Hi, PJ. Thanks for presentation. I have a question regarding packet page 83, the table which shows the parking occupancy by location in Travari, Mirabella community. And in there, the results are shown in the table below, and further in that information, it mentioned that staff has conducted monthly observations to track parking occupancy. Could you please provide more details on that?
Yes, so the observations were conducted starting June 26th of 2021, once the temporary permit parking measures were in place. And we conducted monthly observations from January through June of 2021. And at that point, because we saw that there was a consistent pattern and nothing was really fluctuating, there were no surprises during the previous 6 observations, we actually took a break from observations and then went back to observe in November around the Thanksgiving time to assess if there are any changes associated with holidays and more vehicles returning possibly from colleges, visiting in town, things of that nature. So the observations were monthly from January through June, and then again in November of 2021.
That's great. Thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, hi, PJ. Thank you for that report. Can you describe what contact you've had with the Mirabella community, or between Mirabella and the city, since we last discussed this back in January a year ago?
Our division, the transportation division, we have not had any communication with the Mirabella HOA since January 12th of 2021, when we came to you last. Prior to that, in the summer of 2020, when we were approached by the Travari Homeowners Association, at that time we had some consistent and pretty recurring communication with the Mirabella Homeowners Association. We asked to work with their HOA board and to be invited to HOA board meetings to discuss the concerns for the 2 communities. However, following the January 2021 City Council meeting, we have not had any communication directly with Maravilla.
Okay, so I mean, is it safe to say we really don't have a good sense for, with respect to their CCNRs in terms of what the requirement is for their community on parking or compliance with any parking requirements for example, in their garages or that sort of thing? Do we have any feel for that?
We had requested their CCNRs in the past. That was back in 2020. And we also received some direct communication via email from the HOA manager at Maravilla. And based on the information provided to us from the HOA manager, they did have all 96 parking spaces on site are guest. There is no discussion, there's no negotiating that from what we understood. And they did have some requirements to that 2 vehicles must be parked in your garage. And that was within their CCNRs. Whether that is enforced, whether that has changed since then, since 2020, we do not have an update on that. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'll open up the public comment. I thought we had one more, I'm sorry. If you wish to speak in a public comment on this item, please use the raise your hand feature on Zoom or dial *9 on your telephone. When it is your turn to talk and we will call upon you by name if provided. Remarks are limited to, we're doing pretty quick tonight. Let's leave it at 3 minutes, and a clock will be running on Zoom screen. I'm delaying, so we're up to 4. Speaker's microphone will be muted once the allotted time has expired. We have 5 so far. Let's go with Brad Kavanaugh. You were first, then Seba, I'm sorry.
Unmuted. All right, just unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much for the time. I want to thank PJ DeHoot for all her efforts in bringing to light the problems that we had in our community. I do believe the process of the last year has eliminated the majority of all issues that we have in our community. It has made our community and streets in our neighborhood able to be cleaned for the first time in 6 to 8 years. Safety has been restored in our streets because of limiting the overburdening parking and congestion that we had, and the vandalism and fights with people from the adjacent community have, my understanding, all but stopped now that they're no longer parking in our community. And I think the process that we've done was exactly what was needed. My understanding from the neighborhood next door, and I know some people in your, the city and stuff like that, it's hard to come down and talk with our neighbors, but our neighbors do park now in their own driveways. And that has alleviated quite a bit of the congestion. They're still pushing on their own community, though, not to give away any of their stalls that half of them should have been allocated for their own people if needed. But with that said, our issues in our community have been primarily relieved, and I can only thank the city's participation and help in helping us to save our community from the abuse that we had been under. So thank you.
Okay, Brad, thank you. Seba Raja, hopefully I pronounced that correct, and then Vinky Kumar.
Hi, you're able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for giving me time. And I live in 304 Pearl Grass Lane, and I request you, all of you, to approve the permanent permit parking for us. It is a big blessing. So far, we are my driveway. I'm able to back out of my driveway after permit parking has been implemented. My kids are able to cross the road without fearing for their life, and I'm able to move my garbage cans without the space allowed. People used to come and park in our driveway, and it used to be a big hazard. It used to give a lot of mental pressure and tension for me. Now it is really nice that my driveway and my space before my driveway is actually empty. So I would really, really appreciate if you can all make the permit parking permanent and make our lives better. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I think I said Vinky Kumar was next, and then Anne, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Uwithia. You'll be after Vinky. Go ahead, Vinky.
Thanks, Mayor and Council members, to give an opportunity. I live in 315 Pearl Grass as well. I echo the comment made by Brad and Shivaraja. Now the community is a bit peaceful and my kids can play around with their friends and all those things. Before, I used to be scared when my kid take a bike around. Now I'm not scared anymore. It's clean. It's quite nice now. As Shiva said, I'm able to back out my car as well. Before, I used to go and park my car on the side to make sure that I reserve the spot in front of my home. Now I don't have to do that anymore because after the permit parking, so I park in my garage. So this thing, I mean, I request this will be made permanent because of all the things that's been happening. Now I think it's all peaceful. And thanks for giving me some time slot to raise my concern. I hope that you'll make it permanent. Thank you.
Thank you. And Anne, you're up next. Please correct my pronunciation.
Your pronunciation is perfect. Everyone can hear me? It's perfect.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody, the mayor, council members, for giving us the opportunity to really live like all the residents should live in San Ramon and elsewhere. This whole year has just been a dream where we can look out the window and see each other and wave at each other, and there are no cars coming and going late at night being loud. We're able to breathe easier. My neighbors' kids are riding their bikes, people are walking around, and it's just become like a normal neighborhood where no one is blocking the stop signs. I love going around for a walk, and now my walks have become more peaceful, safer. I don't have to worry about some cars just wrapping around the stop signs or coming around out of nowhere looking for parking. And it was just a bad traffic situation in our area in Travari, and now it's just gone away. It's just like living the dream where it's better than the dream. You're living in a peaceful, safe, harmonious neighborhood, and I'm so grateful for that. And so I would like for that to please continue so that we can just breathe easier and not feel cramped and just be happy people like the way we all deserve to be. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. Let's do Jessica M. and then Sanjay.
Hi, this is Jessica McKiernan, and I live on Azalea Lane.
Yes,
And I would like to echo all of the previous residents as well in appreciation for all the hard work that has gone into the permit parking, also in favor and how it has definitely improved our life here, having 2 young children in my house. I don't have to worry about them riding their bikes or scooters because previously, before the permit parking was in place, there were constantly cars just coming into our court. And I had even said to my husband at one point, we live in a court. Why are there so many cars driving down here and circling? And we just had to be very, very cautious, look both ways before you cross the street. I mean, regardless, but that has changed drastically. Also, again, echoing with the garbage cans, the people didn't know and they didn't care when our garbage nights were. So it made things really difficult for us. So also just in favor and how it has drastically improved our neighborhood.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Sanjay, then Ayush.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Hi, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Sanjay, live on Fuchsia Lane. Again, want to thank the city and particularly the Transportation Committee with excellent work. So I concur with all the other comments. Life has been a lot more peaceful in the last 1 year because of this parking permit program, and I would request it to be made permanent. As everyone is saying, streets are a lot more clean now. There's less crowded, a lot more parking space for us, and we can walk and driving is safer. So overall, I do walk into a lot of time into Miravilla, and I still see a lot of open parking spaces in the guest parking in there. They are always available. And as you know, they were supposed to have 50% for their resident, 50% guest, but that's their issue, that parking is still available there in their guest parking areas. But I'm requesting the city to make this program permanent. And thank you for the good work.
Thank you, Sanjay. Ayush, then Sheila.
Sorry, Mayor and City Council members, I live in Pearlgrass Lane. I think like out of like 10 plus years experience living in that community, Travari community, basically like last year was a bliss, to be honest. The roads were very clean. The kids did not have a problem to go out and play. Garbage can, as usual, was the story. Just my own personal experience. If I want to park my third car, if I come late, basically around like 9 p.m., there is no way I can find a parking lot in the whole community. I have to go across the street to find a parking for my own car, owning the house there in my community. That was the situation, right? I don't want you to go to mention the holidays, whether the Thanksgiving or Christmas holidays or long weekends. People just come and park and don't even bother to remove the vehicle by the morning. It stays there for weeks and weeks. That was the situation we had, but last year it changed everything. And thanks to the city council for making it happen, right? So like security wise, I think enough has been said. We feel more secure and more calm, and we are more confident. The family, the children, the elders are more confident now. And even like driving during night, when we want to reach home at night, we get blindsided because the way that gets parked in the curbsides, we can't even see. That was the situation. And there were stop signs within that, just like 4 roads within that community. We have pretty good stop sign. Nobody used to care about the stop sign. That was the situation we used to have. So I think like with the parking permit, all those have gone. It has enabled our life, day-to-day life, including from elders to children, tremendously. And we request and appreciate your support to extend this parking permit permanently. And also I just want to quote, right, like we do take a walk once in a while across the other side of the community. We do see, like, even though they have a 2 garage open, many of the garages are not been used for real parking, right? And that has been used for something else, right? I think as a city council, they need to take a close look at that and make a wise decision and enable us this permanent parking forever for the Travari community. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And I said Sheila and then Paul Lynch. And Robert Trillo.
Sheila has an older version of Zoom, so I have to remote her into the meeting.
Okay. Can't make it? Can make it. There you go. You're on mute.
Okay, this is Sheila. I am from Pearlgrass Lane, and I agree, of course, with my neighbors with the improvement in the quality of life. But actually, beyond that, before the parking permit project started, I was running numbers, and our neighborhood was actually lagging behind other comparable communities in terms of values by at least $300,000, and that was not fair for our community just because of the congestion that we have in our community. The good news is with the parking project that started January 2021, for the year 2021, we actually increased values in the Travari community by 54%. That's roughly about $600,000 median value increase per household in the Travari community. And just for comparison, it's not just the market being hot, because the rest of San Ramon actually only grew 32%. So us growing 54% versus 32% the rest of San Ramon, that really made a big difference for everybody in the community. And that's it.
Thank you. That's the first time I think I've heard somebody say we only went up 32%, but okay, Paul Lynch, then Robert Trujillo.
Sorry. My name is Paul. I live on Pearlgrass Court, and I want to say thanks to your help getting the parking permits. I think that the fire department's now able to safely enter our community in Travari because now the entrance is wide enough for them to be able to get their trucks in to safely help our community. Our neighborhood's much cleaner. The curbs get cleaned because the cleaning vehicle can come in and sweep the streets. It's safer for our children. It's nicer to go for a walk. The neighborhood looks so much prettier. It reminds me of the rest of San Ramon. And we're able to park in our own neighborhood. So thank you for your help.
Thank you, Paul. Robert Trujillo, then Tiffany.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Robert.
Okay, great. Good evening, Council. Thank you very much for your support. You have, because of your support, you brought us out of chaos into tranquility, in our community. Permit parking has been a resounding success for establishing that tranquil environment in Travari development. Quality of life is improved 100,000%, if not more. Our streets are clean, as is mentioned. We don't have cars revving up and down the street, making a lot of noise. And it was mentioned that the property values in Travari have finally increased because we no longer have a ton of cars in and out of our community cluttering up the place and that are not our own. Travari homeowners wouldn't have to worry about cars parking in front of our streets for weeks and months on end. So it has been just a great experience to be able to have permit parking on a temporary basis. Obviously, we want to have it permanent. Our streets, they're safe, as is mentioned. Kids can run around now as they should in a safe environment. We deserve that right to have a quiet, tranquil environment for our community. And so I wholeheartedly request that the council approve permit parking on a permanent basis in Travari. And again, thank you so much for your support. And the city staff has done a tremendous job in all the presentations. I know a shout out to PJ. She's done a tremendous job in all that she's done for the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Tiffany, and then Rabbi Kulshi, I believe, is the last speaker I have on the list.
Okay, can you hear
And
me?
James Sevier will be last. Go ahead, Tiffany.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm actually probably the only resident of Miravilla on this meeting. So I just wanted to say that I'm not opposed to the permit parking in Travari. I've only lived in the neighborhood maybe 6 years in Miravilla. So I understand, their frustration and where they're coming from. As a resident of Miravilla, though, I also would like to say there were a lot of things that were said about our community that is very upsetting. And it's hard to live next to a community that feels that way about you, to make us seem like we're just a bunch of, people that don't care, which is not true. Especially being harassed during that time. But again, I do support the parking for you guys. And as far as our area, I know that there's been a lot of things submitted to the city council. I'm not sure if the board has looked at these documents and reviewed them, but we ask that you please do that and contact the board to review these things, because there are some things that are being said by homeowners from the other neighborhood that is not true.
Thank you, Tiffany. I have a
Thank you.
I have a handful of them. I've read them, trust me. Rabbi Kolshi and then James, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, Sebier. We'll start with Rabbi Kolshi. There you go. You're back on mute. You're off of mute. We're not getting him. We're still not getting him. I'm guessing, Christina, that we should probably try James and then see if we can get him back in, because we're not getting any audio.
Okay.
Oops. Okay. James, you're up.
Hi, thank you. I'm a Travari resident, have been there for 18 years, and resident and homeowner. And like everybody else in the Travari community, I concur that this has been a long needed solution to a problem that has worsened over the years. I think rather than some of the specifics, I think one of the things that really jumps to my mind is the overall improvement in quality of life. That we now have a neighborhood that is what you would expect of San Ramon. You don't see the urban city blight of cars up and down both sides of the street, so crowded that you can't drive down the road without worrying about somebody coming from the other direction. And can you get past, or was somebody else going to have to back up? You know, that is not what kind of neighborhood I moved into when I chose San Ramon as the place to, you know, invest my money in a house. I certainly sympathize with our Miravilla neighbor who felt that maybe the residents there were being maligned. I think the feeling that I've gotten from other people is we don't think it's the residents, but it's the association that's made decisions that have created this problem of their own making, and they're now asking us to solve their problem when they certainly have latitude to decide whether to allow parking in the spaces, whether to open up guest parking after a certain hour, or to enforce people using their garages rather than parking on the streets. So I think an equitable use of resources is what is needed. And because of the policies of Miravilla is why we were driven to the point we are now. And I definitely heartily endorse making the parking permit situation permanent, because as many people have articulated already, it has definitely improved our quality of life back to the way it was when I first moved into the area. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I don't see any more hands. Oh, let's try him again. Rabbi, can you try to come in one more time? You're still on mute. You're off of mute.
Yeah, I'm.
Hey, that's good.
Oh, thank you for this. I would use my cell phone. First of all, Tiffany, thanks for your comments. We love our neighbors, and we have many friends from your neighborhood, and we are really proud of that, living together with your community. So I'll make that comment first. And then we are living here pretty much from the beginning, 1997. I'm one of the original owners for this place, and we still have quite a few in our neighborhood. And I have observed the changes. The changes we're talking here, the competition and dispute, who got the parking spot was scary and unsafe. And thanks for making the arrangement last year. And I'm happy to see and welcome some of the new neighbors who are coming with their young children. Feel safe to be in our neighborhood. This is a significant change compared to 2 years back. And that all happened. That's also a reflection of your effort that you made in last year and made our community safer and more livable. Thank you. Thanks for your all the effort and all the analysis, fantastic analysis presented to come into this decision. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another speaker. Is it Han Wine? And correct my pronunciation if I have it wrong, please, Han.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just want to thank the mayor and the city councils to make this parking situation better for Travari residents. And I fully supported to make it permanent on this issue. And because it's a really, improve our life over here as residents for over 20 years. And another things I want to bring up to your attention, it's on the Red Wheeler Street between Progress, between Azalea and Fuchsia, that section of the street never been able to sweep because parking is always there. The leaves from last year is still sitting there. So we need. I really want to request to make the street to be able to clean once a month, to hang up the sign over there for one of the Monday or first day of the month. Just the sweeping cars is able to go through to sweep the street. It just piled up like somewhere in Oakland. In those areas you see all those trash over there. It's just terrible. It doesn't look like a San Ramon neighborhood. So that's all my comments. Hope there's anything can be done.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any more attendees with their hands up. I can also ask, do we have any other written comments? I have a handful on my right of formal complaints from the Mirabella HOA. And I have a, certified mail to our city attorney for parking concerns from Birding and Wild. And that's the only written comments I have at this time. Hopefully you've all seen those. We will close the public comment.
You're on mute, Mayor.
You're
There I
muted.
am.
There you go.
Yeah, look at that. There's a time to leave. Tell me that your mayor shows real leadership there. I will also say that since staff has been out there, I think you gave the dates of January or something like that. I did meet with one of the members of the board and we discussed what she wanted to discuss and told her what I wanted to tell her. I have to apologize to, I think it was Jessica who said a lot of people going up and down the street. I know at least 70, 75 times it was me. And I think others have too. Your council took this serious before we just made a decision and we've all been out there. There's not a doubt in my mind. Okay, the discussions before council. You have your hand up first, Councilmember Perkins.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I've been out there and I went out after 7:15 on a weeknight because I thought that was the most appropriate time when the most people would be home during the middle of the week and after most people are working hours. And I noticed that the Travari neighborhood, yeah, there's a few dozen cars that are parked in front, but I noticed that in every case that I noticed that they had their little white sticker in their window or on their bumper. I think they're all mostly in the window. And so those are only belong to their residents. So I didn't see what I consider to be people that didn't have their stickers. I suppose there might be a couple that had a parking pass that were visiting after 7 o'clock. I also drove over into Mirabella, and my wife and I drove around every street and we counted the empty spaces. And that evening, and this was after 7:30, there were more than 60 empty spaces. And one of the letter writers said that we have to declare or demonstrate that there's a place for the displaced cars to park. And to be quite honest, there is a substantial area for those cars to park. It's a matter of choice by the Mirabella HOA and the Mirabella residents. And if they wanted to convert more than what's already in the CC&Rs, I suspect that they could request some relief from the city if they wanted to take some more of those 96 and they wanted to say, we only want 20 guest parking and we want 76 resident parking. They could bring that to the planning commission and the council, and we might be able to give them some relief on that. But they have within their own resources the ability to solve their parking issues. And I really wish and hope that they're not going across Dougherty Road to the Red Willow and Coriander and Red Willow Park to park. That can cause another layer of problems that we really don't want to have to deal with. But I'm so glad that the Travari, their life is turned to what would be considered normal throughout almost the entire city. You know, we dealt with this over in the Fioli. Dave and I did, a decade ago or so. And that solved the problem. The people were really struggling with things such as, where do you put your garbage can? That somebody, Tiffany, I'm sympathetic to what you said, that people were painting Mirabella with a broad brush. I don't believe that's true. But I do believe that there may have been a few bad actors amongst your neighbors. There are 176 units in your development, and most of those units would have 1 or 2 adults living there. So there's probably 250 adults, some of which would have been parking over in the Travari neighborhood. And some of them, even if it's only 1 or 2%, that makes it 5 or 10 people out of 250 may have been bad actors and really abused what looked like a privilege at one time. But I think we've done the right thing for Travari, and we will probably continue to do the right thing for Travari. And honestly, it's the right thing for Mirabella. They can solve their problem, and I really think they ought to. You elect your own board members for your HOA board, and elect some members of the board that are willing to change the parking policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before I chime in?
Yes.
Oh, you moved on me. Go ahead, Sabina. Every time you guys put a hand up or something like that, your screen goes all over the place. Okay.
You know, Dave, you can pin somebody to a place. You can. If
you want me to do technology?
I know.
No.
I know.
Sabina Zafar's up.
All right.
You hit the little pin button and you can anchor them.
So I had a few things I heard, which I had questions about. How are the streets cleaner now? Why is that tied to permit parking? I'm just trying to understand that.
Councilmember Zafar, so internally at the 4 streets that are within the Travari community, in the past, because there was consistent on-street parking 24 hours a day, when the street sweepers would come by the 2nd and 4th Monday of the month, those vehicles were not moving enough for the street sweeping to get done. Since that area has become permit parking during the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., and it has been a deterrence for other community vehicles to come and park, what the Travari HOA has taken upon themselves now is to make sure that at least their own community members receive an email notification every 2nd and 4th Monday to take their vehicles either into their garage or onto their driveway. And we've been told that at our last TAC meeting directly from one of the HOA members. So that's helped in that situation internally. And then as for Red Willow Road, what we had done last year following the city council meeting, because you had a similar complaint come up last year, our public services department actually had a dedicated street sweeping event where they had declared no parking on Red Willow Road between certain hours. And that was to specifically clean the roadway. And that could be something we can engage again based on the comments tonight.
And is that something that can't be implemented where on these streets as well, which says these are the cleaning days? I mean, it happens in several cities where your car will be ticketed or towed if you park on these cleaning days and during these hours. So thinking of alternate ways.
We don't currently do that anywhere in the city, so that would be unique here. But we may have to do that on Red Willow. You know,
Go,
once a month.
Savita.
Hey, there's
Yeah,
Maria.
I mean, that's the thing, right? It's also permit parking is not something we do on all the streets. And so which is the better option as I'm thinking about this, whether to put in permit parking in place or whether to put something like this in place. It seems like, we didn't have a lot of tickets after that first month, which obviously means that people are following the rules once they're implemented as well. So, I mean, I would be very open to exploring alternate ways because it seems the biggest complaint is street cleaning and the streets are not cleaned. And that's because, that seems to be one. And then when it comes to parking, the number of cars have reduced just via permitting, or have we also put stripes for these cars to park in certain areas and not be, for example, parallel parked like you had in that picture? That was the other question.
We do not have any pavement delineations or markings, so it's just open curbside parking. What you did see in the previous pictures, I think was a direct result of the more demand than supply. So there were folks that were actually parking in an illegal manner perpendicular to the curb in the court, but that has since resolved. And in all of the observations since permit parking has been in place, we have not noted that situation.
Okay. I remember getting my first ticket in San Ramon 15 years ago because I was a little bit off the curb. Joe, I blame it on you. But I had to pay that $25 because I wasn't, and that was implemented. So I don't know, again, bad behavior. If you implement that, some of it actually, goes away as well. So those are the couple of questions I had. Thank you.
Mark, and then we'll wrap it up with the vice mayor.
Okay, thank you. Personally, as was mentioned earlier, I've also been there numerous occasions. I've been there during weekdays, during weekends, holidays, evenings, midday. Over the past year, I've been there numerous times. And I've observed an improvement from when this first came up a year ago. It is unfortunate that we've got two communities that kind of didn't like the previous situation, but it sounds like at least one community is satisfied with the improvements that they've seen in things like their kids being able to ride around on bikes now or safely play in the street, the trash pickup, it was very concerning about hearing about arguments out there. Just the ability to back up out of your own driveway or park in front of your house. And the overall quality of life sounds like there's been a big improvement because of this, the temporary permit parking that we put in place. We, as a council, we can make policy and we have discretion in some areas. In some areas, we have less discretion, but I think in this one, we do have discretion. And we not only make policy, but we can make exceptions to policy. And I think permit parking is one of those exceptions to policy. And I think it's turned out to be successful over this past year. So our biggest job is to protect, the health, the safety, and the welfare of the community. And I think the measures that we put in place have gone a long way to do that. So I think it was justified at the time we put the temporary measures in place. I think it's justified now to make it permanent, and therefore I intend to support the resolution.
Sridhar, and then we'll come back to Sabina for round two. Oh,
Thanks, Mayor Edson. I'm looking at this in two aspects. The first one is with the numbers. Like my fellow council members, I had been many times in that area just to find, to see how things looking at the parking spots. And my observations are very close and similar to what our city provided here in this spreadsheet, as well as the numbers that are mentioned by our council members. So based on the numbers, it clearly shows that Travari got like 30%, close to 30% reduction in their parking spaces. And also Mirabella, I don't see a huge increase in their parking numbers, the occupied numbers. I still see it is around 40%, and also there is a 60% of free space. There are given times it can be more than that. Like, for example, yesterday night specifically, once again, I went in the almost close to the midnight to make sure I'm going the peak times when the parking will be done. And I observed that 59 spaces were open. Like Council Member Perkins mentioned, he observed 60, which is pretty much close numbers. And also the same numbers we can see here in the spreadsheet, especially in the November itself, it was like 30 during holiday season. So there is still a huge empty parking spots available in Mirabella. So I think they need to look at the option of how they can provide those parking spaces for their community members, for their residents, and also let Travari's community have their enjoy their residents as well as their community streets. Like some of them, they mentioned about the clean streets, kids able to cross and bike, and they are able to play, you know. And more than anything, like end of the day, as a council, we want to make sure that, as Rabi requested, that it should be safer and livable, right? So that's the whole idea of the meaning of the community that we wanted to have in San Ramon. So based on these numbers, as well as based on the feedback that we received today, I think I don't see any reason why we shouldn't support this permit for permanent parking. And so I'm in support for that. Also, I definitely want to follow up with Mr. Wang's request on street cleaning. Let's see why the street cleaning is becoming an issue even after we have all this in place. So that's my feedback. Thank you.
okay, Council Member Zafar.
I can't make sense of the fact that there's less cars now in one neighborhood and there's still room in the other neighborhood. And where are these cars going? Were they coming, or did they just not belong there? Were they coming from somewhere else? Have they gone back to another neighborhood? That's what's not only concerning me, but also confusing me a little bit, that what's happening to these cars if they didn't go back into the Mirabella neighborhood. So I don't know, it's just not, part of it is not adding up as to what's happening to these cars. Unless there is another street somewhere else where they're going, or they were from a completely different neighborhood, and it has nothing to do with Mirabella in this whole picture. So that's what's concerning me right now, more than anything else. I am not a huge fan of putting public streets with permit parking. I would love to see alternate ways that we can enforce street cleaning. We can enforce the quality of life for people. How else can we be more creative versus putting in permit parking in place? And I don't know if it's another pilot we want to do for 6 months, in which we put up street signs and then enforce that the day that cleaning or garbage pickup is there, that people do not park in places where these streets can't be cleaned and garbage can't be picked up, because that's another way of looking at it and thinking about it as well.
Councilmember Perkins?
Yeah, I can think of 3 places where those cars have gone. Some of them are possibly Travari residents that wanted to retain the space in front of their house for their own use. And now they don't have to park in front of their house to retain that space for their own use. So that's some of it. A second group is there. I'm getting word from a friend that they are parking over in Red Willow on Coriander and by Red Willow Park in some of the surrounding streets. And that may only be 5 or 10 cars, but 5 or 10 cars makes a difference. A third place is that some of the people that may have filled their garage with things that prevented them from parking may have decided, you know what, I'm going to clean my garage enough to at least allow me to park 1 car inside. Whereas if they had 0 cars inside before, now they've pushed things to the side and now they can at least put 1 car in their garage. And I suspect that's probably another 10 or 15, maybe 20 cars. And if you add those 3 things up, they probably add up to at least 40 cars that are no longer parking over in Travari. Between the 5 or 10 people that are now parking, that are Travari residents that are now parking in their own driveway and their own garage, 5 or 10 that are parking over in Red Willow, and 10 to 20 that are now parking in their own garages. And like I said, if you add that up, you're probably getting 30 cars. And so I don't think it's a real mystery. I think all the cars are still there, but they're just in, and there was nobody that's outside of Mirabel and Travari that was parking there. I wouldn't park there. You wouldn't park there. I would like to see, and this is for Maria and Joe and others to decide, I would like to see us implement on Red Willow, not on Fuchsia and Pearlgrass and all that, but on Red Willow, we have at least 1 day a month where we can sweep the street. Because I drove by there on another day in the early afternoon, and I noticed that there are too many cars that are there all the time, so that you can't get a street sweeper down. Or maybe you do one side on one Monday and you do the other side on another Monday. But you say, you know, the right side is the first Monday of the month and the left side is the third Monday of the month. I don't know. Maria, do you have a comment or a thought on that?
Yeah, we can definitely do something like that. What we do is we actually have courtesy signs that we put up, so it's short of enforcement, and then those have helped. So what we'll do is put those out about 48 hours, 72 hours prior to the actual day that we will sweep. So for somewhere like Red Willow, we could implement that. Like you had mentioned, Councilmember Perkins, we don't have any of those, no parking because of street sweeping signs anywhere in San Ramon. We haven't gone to that level yet, but it seems that the courtesy notices that we have been using to give a heads up that we will be sweeping there has worked. So we can try that in that location, and we can definitely enforce the one, at least a 1 month per sweeping once a month.
Vice Mayor Burrows.
Yeah, so I just want to add the data to our Council Member Perkins' observations. So here, if you see in Travari community, there is like 48 spaces. And before we put this permanent or temporary permit, it used to be occupied by 44, right? And then after the temporary permit, the max number that was parked is 33 from our observation, like from this chart, right? So that shows that maybe around 11 to 12 cars, there's only the cars that we keep doing all this additional overhead on Travari, which is added all these issues, right? So it's not like a huge number of cars that were displaced or moved away from this there are around 11 to 12 cars. That's it. So that those are the number that was adding all these issues. I just wanted to share the numbers. That's all.
Let me chime in briefly, I hope, and then see if somebody wants to make a motion. I cannot forget how bad Travari looked before we put the parking permit in. And that includes, though I didn't want to do it at first, I have to agree it was the right thing to do, taking him off of Azalea. We didn't originally have that as part of it. I mean, people were parking as you go into Travari, I don't know how long, but for some time. Up on Fuchsia is it's still bad. I was there at 3 o'clock, and I swear, when you turn into Travari, there was a Honda Civic, and I thought it was dangerous. But before that, I remember telling PJ about one time somebody parked 36 inches away from the sidewalk, and I swear you couldn't put a bike through there, let alone a car. I mean, this was dangerous. We did this for safety. The second reason is for the obvious, is because when people were parking there and making it a parking lot, not just coming by or stopping, cars were left there for days, weeks, months. I mean, they just used Travari as a parking lot. And some of these cars were not what I would say close to the curb either. I still contend at the end of Pearlgrass Lane, I know PJ knows what I'm talking about. I went down there so many times. I finally caught the owner. I said, if you don't move that thing, I'm going to change my boat. And so I saw today that there was a van in front of it, but it's not moving very far. And it isn't as if Travari should be allowed to get storage out of our streets too. But that's not what's happening. Clearly, what I saw today is a normal, reasonable parking situation on a normal street in San Ramon. And that is not what we're going to have if we take parking permit out of there. If you just could see, the pictures don't do it justice. I stopped and talked to somebody on Christmas of 2020 at their house, and Scott absolutely nailed it. Travari was parking in front of their house when they finally got an opportunity to save a parking space in case they had somebody come over to their house. It was absolutely out of the question that you could have a visitor. And after about 30 years of doing this, and I think that's what Birding and Weil is talking about when you see it, Martin, and that includes Fioli, I have never seen a decision I've had to make on permit parking that was more logical to make to continue permit parking than what we're talking about today. And that includes Fioli, with one possible exception, and that was parking permit across the street from Cal High, which I don't think anybody would have questioned. So, I mean, I'm going to support continuing this. I think it's the right thing to do, and it has proven through a program of 1 year that it is the right thing to do. Anyone else before I hear a motion?
I do.
I'll move.
Wait. I asked if anybody else before the motion.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sabina.
So how many permits can a household get as part of this?
I thought it was one per registered vehicle, registered at that residence.
It is one per registered vehicle and 2 guest passes.
Okay, so if you've got 4 cars, you can have 4 permits there.
Okay. Scott, you want to chime in again?
No, I just wanted to make a motion to adopt resolution 2022-021, designating the R permit parking area R.
Okay, to the Azalea Lane, Fuchsia Lane, Pearlgrass Court. We have a motion. Perkins, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Armstrong. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Armstrong,
Yes.
Councilmember Perkins,
Yes.
Councilmember Safar,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Veros,
Yes.
and Mayor Hudson.
Yes, sounds like 5-0 to me. Let's move on to new business. Unless anybody wants to discuss it further. No, I didn't see any there. Let's go to resolution 2022-22, adopting the San Ramon Walking District Plan guidelines. I'm looking at our time. We're still at 8:15. We have an introduction by Planning Division Manager Lauren Barr. Lauren, where are you at? Quit moving around. There you are. Go ahead. You're up.
All right, thank you. Just a brief comment before the presentation. The concept of the walking district goes back many years to a grassroots effort by residents to promote pedestrian access and connectivity within the city. Back in 2019, the City Council, as part of their priorities of putting housing in the core, also included a provision to implement a walking district within the city core. So staff from planning and parks worked with consultants from Design Workshop to engage in stakeholder collaboration and to develop a walking district plan framework. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie with Design Workshop. Staff will be available for questions after the presentation, and then we've also provided a draft resolution for consideration. So with that, I think Stephanie's been promoted, and
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. And thank you, Mayor Hudson and members of the council for your time tonight to be able to share this presentation. I'm going to.
Oh, we lost her. Stephanie, you're on mute, but it was a great speech.
That's good. I'm glad I got through it very eloquently and you're ready to go. Let's see if I can get this to actually play without going all the way through it. How about this? We'll just go from here. So thank you again for the opportunity to present to you tonight. As Lauren said, the development of the Walking District Plan really had its origins in a grassroots community effort that led to one of City Council's strategic items in their 2019-2020 priorities to explore the development of a walking district to support the emphasis of housing in the city core. It was also a high priority goal in the city's parks, trails, open space, and recreation master plan to develop a framework plan for walking district within the city core. Overall, the plan really expands upon that grassroots effort to provide a long-term vision for pedestrian-oriented access and connectivity in the city core, provide an amenity for residents, and really create an identifiable district that draws people desiring a walking lifestyle. The process also built upon the grassroots group's effort, and it broadened those efforts to engage additional stakeholders and the broader community. So during the data gathering phase and mapping phase, in teal colored on the left, we conducted focus group interviews with East Bay Regional Park District, city and county staff, members of the grassroots walking district community, and property owners, including groups such as Sunset Ranch, Summerhill Homes, Kaiser, and others. We brought those groups back together as part of a larger stakeholder meeting, and then followed that with a public virtual webinar where we discussed community destinations, gyms, and also issues and opportunities in terms of how to create more connectivity within that project area. We reviewed those, the outcomes of those, and conducted additional stakeholder meetings, looked at recommendations, brought those ideas back to the greater public through a virtual public meeting to gain feedback on the system and the routes and a branding, signage, and logo and theming, and then went through a couple of iterations and cycles as we refined the plan and documented it to bring it back to those stakeholder groups, reviewed and revised based on their iteration and feedback, and then brought it to the Planning Commission and Parks and Community Services Commission. Those discussions really led to the refinement and confirmation of the vision that had been expressed by the grassroots group and the goals that they had initially developed, shown on the slide before you here. That vision was to promote a pedestrian-centric community with a series of 6 goals about creating a comfortable place for people to walk and bike within the core, to identify walking and biking loops and routes, to connect those civic, recreation, and commercial destinations, to look at ways to enhance wayfinding and provide a long-term vision for pedestrian-oriented access and connectivity, and again, to really improve the connectivity and create a sense of place, both for those who live here now and those who might live here in the future. In the graphic to the left, you see a where the project area originated as part of that grassroots effort, highlighted in blue, and then in red is the original vision for one of the original walking loops identified by the grassroots effort. And then, as you see in goal 2, identifying more walking and biking loops and routes really became an opportunity that we saw as part of this process as well. So documenting those loops really starts thinking about where they might lie in terms of within city property. So identified to the top of the map in green is Central Park. So you can see the opportunity to start thinking about those loop connections with a connection around Central Park and then connecting to Story Walk. And then really thinking about how those connections really feed across to enhance that a seamless transition between Central Park to the Iron Horse Trail, and then across to the west to Bishop Ranch, and those opportunities within the city core. So identified in those bold orange arrows is really the enhancement of those crossing connections, and then the thinner orange dotted dash lines is an opportunity as new projects come online and Bishop Ranch's, the City Walk guidelines are incorporated and move forward, that really looking at those opportunities to enhance exploration and those interconnected tissues between that area as well. That then connects over to what we're calling the Lake Loop, which really, again, builds upon that red alignment that was originated from the grassroots group. It connects Central Park across the Iron Horse Trail to Bishop Ranch, around Annabelle Lake, Lake Cecilia, and back up through around the Iron Horse Trail. There is one change that we recommended as part of this loop, is that as it connects across the Iron Horse Trail, that we brought it up around to Executive Parkway and down versus through BR3, which would require someone to sort of work their way and traverse through the parking lot. And as people are navigating the parking lot, trying to find a space, recommended that we pull it up, connect to the transit center and back down through. It doesn't prevent someone from walking that way, but just makes it an opportunity as part of a signed route. Another route is the City Walk Loop, which really connects around some of the city pathways that have been proposed as part of the City Walk guidelines, looking at connecting along Camino Ramon, the existing pathways that are separated there to Executive Parkway and around Bishop Drive. And then expanding that connection up to a perimeter loop. So for someone who might be a little bit more fitness oriented and wants to get a little bit more mileage out of a loop, connecting up to Norris Canyon Road. And then expanding that also in terms of thinking about the Iron Horse Trail Loop as it connects up and around and potentially down Camino Ramon. But really the idea is that these loops that have been identified as part of the plan really could be mixed and matched. They could be expanded upon. And again, this idea of exploration and interconnectivity. One of the other goals of the plan and pieces that we worked through with the city staff and the stakeholders were branding and signage. So we conducted branding discussions. And as part of those branding discussions, some of the ideas were really that the walking district is playful, it's clean, timeless, it balances urban and natural, it balances the past and the future, that it's connected, beautiful, fun, and vibrant, dynamic, iconic, and social. So 3 different logos were identified. And really, as we developed the logos, it became apparent that it's not just about the walking district, but it's about a brand that could be considered for the entire community, that could have a tag of Walk San Ramon, that could really reflects the hills and the movement as well, and that it could be really integrated with existing signage and layered with some of the other partner signage that occurs within this project area and within the city itself. That brand is then recommended to occur as part of an overall signage system to orient people, to let them know that they are within the walking district, decision points in terms of thinking about routes and signage, and then confirmation as well, along with combining that within a potential for an app that could track mileage, be part of a city programming in terms of really promoting the walking district itself. So seen on this map before you is that series of 3 levels of signage, the first in blue dots where you would orient people at some of those jumping off points in blue with an information kiosk and maps, talking about where the routes might be. In red, those decision points, so the directional signage to help people know where to go and some of the other interesting places that are along the corridor and within the walking district. And then in purple, the confirmation signs to remind people that they're within this special district and part of the overall brand. A series of supporting amenities are also recommended, those being seating, drinking fountains, public opportunities for public art, and restrooms. The diagram that you see on your screen currently is an initial recommendation for where those facilities might be. In the lighter color are existing locations for seating, and the darker orange are proposed locations for seating along the Iron Horse Trail, along Camino Ramon, and then a little bit more of the areas that have higher use levels and potential for higher use levels within parks. Similarly, proposed drinking fountains are also looked at within where those amenities might go within proposed parks with new development, and then where they currently exist within City Center and then within Central Park. In green are the existing restrooms, the light green being existing restrooms and the dark green being proposed, again, associating those with other public facilities. And then the opportunity, again, for public art. And again, those opportunities really are apparent as they present themselves. So although there are dots on this map, really the final locations may vary from this diagram. So thinking forward to implementation, it's important to recognize the graphic on the left represents ownership. So within the sort of lighter pinkish color represents private ownership. And then the area in green is Central Park. And then you can see the Iron Horse Trail as it traverses from north to south through the corridor. So looking at, if you just squinted, you can really recognize that because the majority of the project area is within private ownership, it is recognized that a lot of the improvements will need to be done in tandem with public-private partnerships and as new projects move forward, and the opportunity to bring stakeholders into the conversation. I think the real positive piece here is that as part of those stakeholder conversations, the owners within the project area have participated and have shown support for the vision expressed and for implementing ideas as they come forward. It was also important as part of that idea to then align the recommendations with some of the other plans that are existing. So within the city center master plan and the guidelines presented there with the pathways that you can see in the diagram on the right. So the application of the guidelines in terms of thinking about how to move forward and improve walkability and connectivity within this district was organized within a system or a network of pathways, which you can see on the right. That network really reflects 2 things. One, the location of the pathway, whether it's in City Walk, whether it's near a roadway or in a recreation area, and then also the level of use. So areas with higher use might be wider to accommodate those higher pedestrian levels, and then areas of lower use might be narrower. But overall, really thinking about that opportunity for connectivity, and then to make things interesting, give people a reason to walk, make sure that they're safe and that they're comfortable. So in the diagram on the left where you can see the map, again, that's the application of these ideas with the Iron Horse Regional Trail connecting from south to north, with opportunities for improved connections to the Iron Horse Trail. The City Walk Parkways are in yellow, and I'll go through these a little bit more in detail in just a minute. Those City Walk Parkways, again, align with the guidelines for that area that have been put in place by the master plan. They're recommended to be 8 to 12 feet wide and then buffered or set back from the roadways. Primary connectors enhance and bring along that same idea of the City Walk Parkways of wider walkways that are set back from the roadways, as well, but might have higher use levels and so therefore are wider. Secondary connectors shown in light blue, 5 to 8 feet wide, again set back from the roadway, but because they are in areas of less use, can be a little bit narrower. And then areas, the connective tissues within some of the recreation areas and amenity areas as shown as primary recreation paths. Again, the diagram that you see in map form is really diagrammatic. So at this scale, the yellow line that you see that represents the City Walk Parkway is really reflects the fact that it's the connective location from point A to point B, but the actual final alignment of that path might meander and pull off from the roadway itself. And that's anticipated to be implemented and envisioned as part of the series of sections and imagery and guidelines that are included as part of the plan. So diving into that network, the first piece is the Iron Horse Trail. The enhancements that are shown here are really recommended within this section to separate those primary uses. It coordinates with the recommendations made by the East Bay Regional Park Districts as part of their Iron Horse Trail corridor study, in which within this section, they identify the separation of uses, what they refer to as a rolling path that's 14 feet wide, separated from a walking path, which is 6 to 8 feet wide, providing shade and seating, enhancing those trail connections to Central Park and to the other portions of the walking district, incorporating signage, and then looking at the overcrossings at Bollinger Canyon and Crow Canyon. In plan view, we'll start at the right side of your screen. You can see the overcrossing, the future overcrossing that is currently being worked on across Bollinger Canyon as it comes down. The Iron Horse Trail then continues in this light blue color, and you can see the separation between both the rolling path to the bottom of the page and then the walking path to the north and to the upper, or to the east to the upper portion of the page, opportunities for seating, and then connections. So really these big orange arrows that you see are those really enhancements to the connection both to the west, to Bishop Ranch and the walking district area, and then to the east to Central Park. And then potentially as those uses come together in those mix of walkers, the people coming down from the overpass and connecting into Central Park, the opportunity for a potential bike roundabout there. What that might look like in illustration view is in the existing image in the lower right-hand corner in black and white, you can see the existing Iron Horse Trail within this corridor and the wider right-of-way corridor here, and you can almost see the existing use track that is within this corridor of runners and walkers that separate from the cyclists within this zone. But the opportunity to formalize that separation, provide seating, potentially a little bit of branding and signage, and where possible, enhancing the shade. And then that opportunity connection as between Central Park and along Bishop Drive, looking at that opportunity for a bike roundabout and really just to open up that connectivity. So as you're in Central Park, you can look at it across and see the Iron Horse Trail and really see the connection as it comes through. In section looking at the City Walk Parkways, this is a section looking at Camino Ramon. Again, these guidelines really align with what has been set forth within the City Walk design guidelines. The location of those are in your map to the lower right. In yellow are the City Walk Parkways. Again, the idea here is to have wide walking corridors with pathways that are separated from the travel lanes of the roadway and really incorporate and work in and with between those existing trees. The primary connectors build upon that idea of the pathways, again, looking at a wider walking surface that is separated and set back from the roadways, the opportunity to incorporate seating and shade, and really where the right-of-way allows to be able to allow it to meander too. In section, this is looking at, again, I'll orient you first on the lower right-hand corner. In blue, you can see those locations where it's recommended for that to apply this idea of primary connectors, where you have a wider pathway system, but it's also set back from the roadway. So along Camino Ramon, Executive Parkway, and Bishop Ranch. And then in section, you can see the application of that along Norris Canyon Road, where again, widening the pathway and then setting it back from the roadway itself. Secondary connectors are the fourth category. And again, these connections really serve to make those broader linkages between destinations. Because these walkways are located in areas that don't currently have high levels of activation or density of destinations, it's recommended that they would range in size from 5 feet to 8 feet, which is really comfortable for two people to walk side by side and then to have another person to pass. And as it is possible within the existing conditions to be able to, again, set them back from the roadway and provide seating, but recognize that these also occur in areas of tighter right-of-way constraints. I'd also like to note the recommendation for the secondary connectors is also an enhancement of the existing standard for sidewalks within San Ramon, which essentially is a 5-foot sidewalk that is adjacent to the curb. So again, setting it back from the roadway, as you can see in this section here, and then providing a little bit of additional landscape buffer and widening where possible is an enhancement to the existing standard. And in the lower right portion of your screen, you can see in light blue where the location, general connective pieces from point A to point B are recommended as part of the secondary system. The primary recreation connectors, again, are those connections that occur in higher use levels, but are in recreation and amenity zones, such as around Lake Annabelle and within Central Park. So again, opportunities to have a wider pathway that allows for a mix of uses and different experiences. And then secondary recreation connectors, again, within those recreation zones, but within the overall circulation system where they might have lower use levels and offer a different experience. And finally, as projects move forward and as opportunities arise, really the plan recommends that all projects are reviewed in terms of these 4 elements of walkability and then 8 corresponding principles that we're providing a reason to walk, that walkways and pathways are convenient, that they connect people to those desirable destinations, and that they consider opportunities for routes and loops that encourage walking for mental and physical fitness, and that they're safe, that they reduce conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles and other mobility modes. This is especially important at crossings where you want to reduce that crossing piece as much as possible and keep the uses separate, and that they're traversable. So this thinks about allowing people to move from place to place without major obstacles. So that can be the surface material, and then also some of the specific design elements, again, to make them very accessible. That they're comfortable, that they provide shade, seating, and an opportunity to really help improve the physical and mental enjoyment of the pathway, and that they're connected and layered with other transportation strategies such as bicycle routes and transit systems, and overall that they're really lively and interesting. So these are the opportunities really for placemaking and then thinking about how they work in with other land uses. And those could be achieved with physical design, the layout of surfaces, wayfinding, again, thinking about architecture and art and the landscape itself. So as we presented the draft plan to the Parks and Community Services Commission and to the Planning Commission, some of the feedback of some of the themes of the feedback we heard were that there was overall support for the plan, for the process, for the vision, and for the branding and logo pieces. But the feedback really came to strengthen the implementation chapter, specifically understanding who is responsible and how will the progress be tracked. And then considering opportunities to even further bolden and enhance some of the plan recommendations, thinking about specific recommendations to align walkways on the interior of residential areas and have more meandering paths, to provide additional loops and potentially extend the project area, to make Camino Ramona slow streets that could be closed, and also really thinking of it as being not pedestrian centric and not autofocused, and providing additional signage. The other 2 themes were to consider focusing San Ramon's public art program in the walking district, rather than having it occur throughout the city, but to really focus some of those requirements to occur within the walking district to make it concentrated. And then also considering to make the plan more prescriptive or created incentives for implementation. So that led to the few changes that were made as part of the plan presented to you today, which are represented in the errata. And the majority of the changes were really within the implementation chapter itself, confirming that the implementation of the plan's vision is envisioned to continue to be a shared responsibility with planning and with parks and community services, each of those departments having their own specific roles and responsibilities. That updates would be provided annually as part of the general plan annual report, that there are potential funding sources that were added, and then there was an increased list of the city-led projects as well. And listed here are 5 of those, including developing the digital walking district mapping and collateral to promote the walking district, programming walking events, incorporating art and interactive elements, and reviewing related project applications for opportunities to achieve the vision that's set in the plan, and then also to reflect the implementation of the plan as part of the General Plan 2040 policy update. And finally, also just to reinforce that it is a vision, and to end on conclude the plan on a very positive note, and to remind and reinforce that it is about a vision to have a pedestrian-oriented city core, and to really look forward to advancing walkability and the goals that are set forth in the plan. So that concludes my presentation for the evening, but I will remain available for questions.
Okay, any clarifying questions from staff? Let's pull this thing down if we can, though I'm going to want it back up. So go ahead. Who's first? Who wants to jump out there? And oh, Sabina, go ahead.
So a couple of clarifying questions. One, do we have an idea of how long it will take to implement something like this if we were fully funded today?
I can start with that and have Lauren add in. I think that the pieces that because much of the improvements would be on private property, some of the timeline would be based on private development's timeline. So it's not particularly the purview of the city to dictate some of the timeline. Lauren, would you add to that?
Yeah, so for example, the City Walk Master Plan is a phased development over 25 years. And so we would expect as projects come in, frontages and connections would be improved as you go, and with the plan serving as a guide or template for implementation over time. In addition, there are opportunities for some of the programming that Stephanie talked about, and that's really a question of council priority and getting resources allocated to do signage and other things that we can start to create some of those networks.
So will we create a CIP for this to kind of then start, or how would it be a separate CIP that then we would start funding or something like that?
Well, it could be a combination of funding mechanisms, everything from grants to CIP. Obviously, CIP would work primarily within the public right-of-way side of things. A lot of the improvements within Bishop Ranch area are actually on private property. Okay. And so it's a balancing act between the two.
Yeah. So I guess one of the reasons I'm asking is if there were opportunities for funding through the state or through, something like that, what would we need to have in place before we could possibly ask for a state budget allocation? Or
I mean, I think it depends on what the actual funding source is. I mean, obviously the Iron Horse Trail overcrossing has a lot of public funding associated with it and will be a key aspect of this walking district concept. So, I think we can look for those opportunities, look for areas that we have discretion, and work on developing an implementation strategy for those areas and how that might dovetail in with private sector development as it comes online.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for the presentation. It was a beautiful presentation and very detailed.
Vice Mayor Burrows.
Thanks, Stephanie, for your presentation. It's a very exciting project. So thanks for showing the pictures that give us much more depth on overall plan. So regarding the responsibility to enforce, you showed the errata, the last slide, to enforce the walking district elements. So you mentioned that it can be shared between Planning Commission and Parks Commission, right? So did we run through this idea with both commissions? And what are the recommendations if we ran through?
So I guess I can start with a response. The comments that we got from both groups were really about how to go about implementation, and there are natural areas of each group that fall within line with responsibilities. You know, obviously planning services deals with development proposals and new developments, and we go through architectural review and land planning efforts that we can then start to shape in the form and matching with the guidelines for this project. And then of course, the Parks Group and the Parks Commission, they will deal with the public recreation areas as well as some of the master planning activities and actions. And so it really is a symbiotic relationship between the two groups, because again, we're talking about a partnership of both public and private activities. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Pretty much, I think. So if we are we confident that with enforcing through planning and Parks Commission, can we achieve our walking district overall goal? That's where I'm going from here is like just to make sure that how we are going to enforce. One of the feedback, like for example, I received from our community is that can we have a walking district committee who can oversee this overall enforcement and also make sure we continue to explore future projects so that we can expand this furthermore. So is that something that we looked at?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is enforcement probably isn't the right word. We are working as a collaborative effort to implement a vision through a set of guidelines. Because so much of this involves private property, it's very difficult for the city to impose development standards without a correlation to public benefit. And so we can definitely shape these things and look for opportunities to connect these things short of mandating them. This is not an ordinance that we're adopting. These are basically guidelines that will help shape how we review projects in the future so that we get a coordinated response. Likewise, from a standpoint of public improvements, that's really a question for council in terms of allocating funds and approving projects for the improvement of public space. So we do have discretion there. We just have to balance competing interests with private property development.
And through the mayor, I'd like to kind of tag on what Lauren just said, is that as we review development applications, so a city walk works its way through the final phase of approvals, we will be looking at how they can implement the walking district as part of their approval process too. So they are aware of it. They participated, as did the BR6 folks, in the development of the walking district. And so, as Lauren mentioned, the public-private partnerships that we have established for the development of City Walk will help us to further the implementation of the walking district in the long term.
Sounds good. So what I'm hearing is we have enough guidelines and process procedures so that we can make sure that this walking district is going to be implemented as envisioned. So that's my understanding. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
I think you're correct. And I would just add one other thing. We already have a lot of tools that will help with implementation, such as our public art program. And so there are ways to start to focus those resources that are already required for projects and help shape that Likewise, with our signage standards, master sign programs within Bishop Ranch and with other projects, there's opportunities to then include branding and other provisions within the review of those types of projects too. So this just becomes a roadmap for implementation over time. But I think that's the key, is it's not something that's going to happen all at once. It's going to be a assembled group of projects that will ultimately create this vision and a wonderful network of connectivity within the area.
Yeah, that's exactly, because it is going to be like over the period of 25 years project. So we should not miss at any point of time that that suddenly the vision is changed into something else, right? So that's why I want to make sure we are confident that we have appropriate guidelines, that we can make sure this implementation is done through our planning and parks commission and departments.
And I would also add that there are any number of opportunities we haven't even thought of that might present themselves over time. So we're also open to looking for those in implementation as well.
That's great. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks.
Perkins, Armstrong, Hudson, then break before public comment. Go ahead, Scott.
I want to thank Vice Mayor for bringing it up. Sometimes when you have two bodies that are responsible, there are things that fall in between them. One thinks that the other is going to take care of it, and nobody takes care of it. So I'm a little concerned that by dividing the responsibilities, you've actually watered it down rather than enhanced it. And so I'm a little concerned, and I would like to know who is ultimately responsible for ensuring that the plan is followed to the maximum extent possible.
Well, I think that can be, so let's give it an example looking at City Walk, right? So most of the walking district is part of that ultimate development. And so as those applications do come in for review, there'll be a public hearing process. And through our process, we do engage our Parks Department and our Parks Commission in the development of parks and the amenities that relate to them. And so as part of that, they would be in the process of shaping the ultimate project and then giving us input to feed to the Planning Commission in the form of our conditions of approval. So those elements of the walking district, such as public park, amenities, can be implemented with that portion of development.
Okay.
And also, and also we have, we'll be coordinating an annual report through the general plan annual report that goes to the Planning Commission and the City Council, so the progress can be documented year after year.
Is your expectation that we are going to include references to the walking district plan in the general plan and in future specific plans that are in this area?
Well, we certainly can. I believe as part of the adoption of North Camino Ramon specific plan with the City Village BR6 project, we did make a reference to the walking district to acknowledge its existence.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to see that in the next update of the general plan, that in places where it's appropriate that we refer to the walking district plan so it gets memorialized in our general plan. This process, we want to make it as prescriptive as possible, that it really emphasizes the city's interest in making these things happen and puts the onus on the developer to show that they are complying with our plan. And if they can't, that they provide evidence as to why a particular element can't be included. But I'd like to put the burden on the developer to show that they have complied, or that they give evidence as to why they can't, as opposed to San Ramon and their planning commission begging developers to help us out.
I think that's something that can be addressed through project-specific findings as we go through the review and approval process. So I think that's a good comment.
Okay, Member Armstrong, then me, and then we'll take 5.
Yeah, just to carry on with this thought a little bit, you know, there's a lot of things going on here with this whole city core area that's so important to us. And we got the walking district, we've got our bicycle master plan to consider, the transit system. We've got art things going on. And so, you know, although I'm not a big fan of increasing bureaucracy, but maybe this is a time to consider a separate advisory committee of sorts to a walking district advisory committee, because that could integrate all those things, or some kind of a city core advisory committee or something like that, to make sure that all these different things that we are talking about in terms of you know, intentionality for all these different programs are all considered. They're an advisory committee. They're not an enforcement. You know, they can't prescribe things and all that, but they can take a step back and take a look at the integration of all these things and maybe help any potential future developers to see where there needs to be better consistency or intentionality or deliberateness in their actions. So just a suggestion there on that. And then I'll make another comment about, you know, and maybe a question. So I like this idea of the slow street, right? The Camino Ramon. I've seen that other places in the country, other places in Europe and around the world. I'd love for us to be able to do something where we can close it for some pedestrian centric activity. I didn't see it referenced in the errata. I mean, I saw it was brought up by in commission meetings and things like that, but I didn't see it addressed. Is that something that just as we go forward into the future, we'll take a look as things get developed and built out and the time is ripe for perhaps consideration of that sort of thing, that we go forward with that? Or how do we kind of implement that if we all think that's a good idea?
Well, I think primarily because we're talking about the use of public right-of-way that's owned and operated by the city, it's within the discretion of the city to work on a closure program or some other thing. The design guidelines specifically relate to the circulation network that's in place day to day. And so if there is a desire to close public right-of-ways periodically for events or whatever, that's something that I would imagine that our engineering and transportation folks could look at as a possibility. Obviously, there's some issues and considerations with, you know, emergency response and you know, traffic as well. And so, but again, I think that can be dealt with on a case-by-case level, as opposed to necessarily as part of this program, because it really wasn't part of the consideration for the walking district in terms of how a public space might be created with roadways, that is.
Yeah. All right. Okay, thank you. I may have some other comments later, but thank you.
Okay, we're just into the questions now. We still got to open it up to the public. So Sridhar, you're going to have to wait till after. We're cutting you off. I get the last question. Stephanie, if you still have that map, I want to see the purple lanes. The purple lane is like 2.6 miles or something on the Iron Horse Trail. And I think it went Executive, then back down Camino Ramon.
Yes.
There it is. And that's 2.6 miles, correct?
Approximately, yes.
I would ask that you look to take that purple line back towards Sports Basement and see if you are making an out and back to Sports Basement if you have a 5-kilometer loop. If you do, and you could make that another one, you know, Purple 2 or something like that. Call it the Prince Loop. I don't know. Minnesota Mini Walk or something, but a 5K loop.
The Dave Hudson Memorial Walk.
I'm not dead. Sridhar, I'm going to wait till after the break because I know I'm not the only one that wants to take 5 minutes. Is that okay? And you can be first coming out?
Sure, no problem.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll have Sridhar have the last question, then we'll open it up to public. We'll be back in 5. Christina, are you back?
I'm back.
Good. Okay, we are back in session. I believe we left with Vice Mayor Barros had a question before we go to public comment.
Yep, thanks, Mayor Hudson. After looking at that beautiful Iron Horse Trail picture, I can't stop asking the question. Just pretty much like adding to your question. So is the Iron Horse Trail enhancement, is that coming from our county approved project to enhance Iron Horse Trail? The reason why I'm asking that question is, if we are making that so beautiful and nice stretch, is it going to be all the way across throughout the trail, or is it going to be only that stretch the enhancement will be?
The plan itself looked at just this project area, but East Bay Regional Parks District, as part of the Iron Horse Trail Corridor Study, looked at the full route of the trail, not just within San Ramon, but within neighboring jurisdictions as well. I would need to go back and look at their recommendations for other segments of the trail, but the idea of separating the pathways are specific to this segment and aligned with those recommendations.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It has a lot to do with the width of the right of way and available land.
Yep, it's like we get requests all the time about the width issues, the walk and bike, so sharing issues, right? So at least with this project and hopefully with our future East Bay Parks project, we solve that problem. So that's
it's a plan, Sridhar. There are lots of plans out there. I just can't wait until you want to put concrete over some of those gas lines and stuff, only to find out that Kinder Morgan doesn't like you anymore. Okay, if we don't have any more comments, let's open it up to public comment. If you wish to speak in a public comment on this item, please raise your hand or dial *9 on your telephone. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes. We got 16 attendees, and Joyce Carr wants to speak. Joyce, you're up first.
Good evening. Just one very quick question, looking at the presentation and all of the maps. On the map showing where Norris Canyon is, there's an arrow that's heading west. It looks like it goes across the freeway. And I was just curious to know what that arrow was for.
I think it's actually Camino Ramon, but do you know it? Where'd she go? You guys keep, there she is. Stephanie, do you know what she's talking about?
It's an arrow. It is on Norris Canyon because it was on most of the pictures. Yeah.
I believe it's referring to greater connectivity across. So that ties to the Parks and Trails Master Plan and then the Bikeway Plan, which looks at broader connections east and west through the city.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak under public comment on the item, what are we calling this? The adopting of the San Ramon Walking District Plan Guidelines. Going once. Anyone else? Anyone? Joyce? Okay. Susan Ferris, Intercom. You're up.
Here.
Yes.
Thank you very much. In reviewing all of your plans, it looked to me like approximately 98% of the walking district is private property. And I was wondering if you could tell me what percentage of that property is owned by Sunset Development and how much are the other private individuals?
I do not have that number off the top of my head, unfortunately, but.
And okay, and
Lauren,
the second part of my question then was going to be, once you figured that out, there's been a couple of comments that those folks that own that private property were engaged in discussions about this walking plan. And I would be curious, again, to know who those people were. And then how, as part of your enforcement or your implementation down the road, how you would take into account if sections of that property sells and you have a new person coming in that wasn't involved with this, how you would apprise them of the requirements for this or the design.
Gee, everybody volunteers for that one, don't they? Go ahead, Lauren. You unmuted first.
I just want to make sure you want a response during public comment.
Okay.
So again, we have this master plan and guidelines. So through the design review process, regardless of ownership, we would be looking for opportunities to implement this plan. So as part of architectural review and design review, we would be talking with the property owners and working with them to engage and implement these projects where possible. Again, it's not possible in every situation. Often there are utility constraints and other things, but we see, where there are opportunities that we can incorporate it into the planning of a site level improvement, we'll do that.
Okay. Anyone else? I assume that was it, Susan. I'm sorry, you're still on there. Did you have another question? And I'd kind of kicked you
No,
out.
it would just be whether it's whether Stephanie would be the right person to follow up with to find out what the percentage is of the private ownership. Who owns what percentage?
Okay.
Well, we did have the exhibit that was shown that shows the public spaces versus the private. So the majority is private. Bishop Ranch owns the majority of the core area, and then it gets fragmented ownership as it gets to the north. But yeah, I don't have specific percentages for you.
Okay. We hit you 0 on that one, Susan. Anyone? I was hoping somebody else would chime in. I thought this was a big one tonight, but nobody else wants to speak to it. So we'll close the public comment. Were there any written on this, Christina? Seeing none. Okay, it's before the council. Any further? We can jump in comments and questions, and I've got Councilmember Zafar and a waving hand from Perkins. So let's start with Zafar, Perkins, and then Burrows.
So first of all, I'm just super excited to see this. The presentation was amazing. The pictures looked great. And if this becomes a reality, I think that's going to be amazing. I really did like the logo, the logo and the branding, which kind of connects more of a trail versus the box one. I thought that was pretty cool, kind of builds a branding around San Ramon and around the walking district as well. I didn't see as many restrooms, depending on, especially on the side across the lakes. And so I don't know if that's something, especially we are a family-oriented community and little kids have small bladders sometimes. So just looking at that. I have been on tours and I've given some tours just organically to people of what exists today. And every time I've done that or been around people, people find it so amazing in some of the undiscovered parts of San Ramon, if you will, because it's primarily been a business park and people haven't walked around as much. And it's been amazing feedback. And so I can't even imagine once we put the signage and proper trails and paths and everything. So I'm just saying I'm very excited about this plan and any opportunities we can find and any support we can provide and getting funding for this. And hopefully, getting this accelerated beyond, more than 27 years that we don't have to wait. I'll be old and frail and go with my walking stick, but whatever. But yeah, thank you so much. This is really great. I've kind of seen it evolve and today's presentation was awesome.
Okay, Scott, you're up.
Well, I'm just hoping that Sabina will push my wheelchair around this. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Where?
No, I'm really pleased that this project is as developed as it is. I kept hearing rumors about it and from friends and colleagues on the various commissions and all. I like logo concept number 1 too. I think that's a cool one. Along those lines, it was mentioned by a couple of council members, and I think we ought to pursue this. And maybe this is something for the policy committee because Mark and I don't have enough to do. And that is develop a concept for a advisory committee that's oriented towards this. And as projects come forward, they review the project with an eye towards ensuring that as much as possible that project meets the goals of the walking district plan. And so I think that needs some more development, but I think there's probably support for that. It doesn't have to meet on a monthly basis or even quarterly basis. Maybe it meets on a as needed basis, but I think there's room for something like that. But all in all, I want to make sure that we implement as much of this as we possibly can. And I recognize it takes the cooperation of the developer, because the land belongs to the developer in most cases. I see the city manager, you commenting on my comment?
I just wanted to throw out there, I'm unsure, but I think the city attorney should weigh in. We, in the light of SB 330, would a walking district meeting count for one of those meetings? Because that
probably would
be significantly problematic to do that.
And it may be a case where we can't, if it's not an SB 330 project.
No such thing.
There is such a thing, David. You know, the BR6 project wasn't the SB 330 project. So there are projects potentially coming through that aren't SB 330. But you are absolutely right, Joe, that this is probably not the place to spend an SB 330 meeting, and you've only got five to work with. This is probably not the place, but maybe that's something that the policy. Maybe that's something that the policy committee can sort out.
Okay, Sridhar.
We want to build San Ramon vibrant community, right? So I'm sure this is going to be the key walkable district. My personal experience, wherever I visited some great cities, they all well known for walkable. Shopping, they typically, some of the European they call as a shopping walk districts, but so I'm sure this will play a very important role in building our future San Ramon vibrant community. So I would like to thank our walking district committee, all participated focus groups, Parks and Community Services Commission, department, public commission and department. This is incredibly great work, amazing work. And I think this combines all our components that needed to be a walkable community, like better health. What are the points you mentioned there? Like better health, happier residents, increased sense of community, overall better quality of life, increased economic activity, all those aspects included in this. I'm very excited and looking forward for the implementation. And just to add on to Council Member Perkins, we should definitely look at the option of exploring a walkable, not walkable, I mean walking district advisory committee, so that can provide us consistent guidelines for us. So at least we should explore that option, I think. So thank you, Stephanie, once again for great presentation.
Mark?
Yeah, I echo the comments from Vice Mayor Veros.
You went up mute, but it was a great speech.
And you're muted, Mark.
Okay. I was saying, I will say again, I echo the sentiment of Vice Mayor Veros in terms of the recognizing all the work that's gone into this, from the grassroots effort all the way through all the commissions and committees and departments that have been involved in seeing this through. That's a lot of work, and I think it's been important work. And we talk a lot about the future of the city core area, and this has a direct influence on how that's going to look into the future. So I'm excited that this and hopeful that this plan will keep moving forward. Stephanie, great presentation, and the vision, the goals, the guidelines, all that is really going to help tie in together the walking district, the bicycle master plan, the parks master plan, all the future transit that we have. All that gets tied together and considered as in part of this, and it provides a reference document for us as we kind of move into the future and consider future development. So I love the fact that it's deliberate, it shows intentionality, and again, it'll help guide our future projects as we look at how we might develop the city's core. So I like what I see, and all in favor of, and I look forward to kind of seeing some of this come to fruition in the future.
Sabina Zafar?
Yeah, just one more comment. I like the idea that this is going to be part of the master plan, because I think that way we will make sure that whether people come and change or whoever is not part of it, it's part of our vision and a master plan. And that'll make, that'll kind of won't require us to have separate meetings and things like that in order to make sure that, developers are complying with this. And hoping that in 30 years, we're not all in a metaverse and are actually walking. So had to throw that out there.
Oh my goodness.
Who's going to push my wheelchair?
Okay, I'm going to be
Three
the
little crypto kitties that are going to
put them all on mute. I'm going to be the contrarian here. As far as on two things in particular. One, Camino Ramon, when you start talking about Camino Ramon, you need to start talking about it in multiple transportation systems objectives. And especially with Roundhouse, I have no idea where he's going to be going with Roundhouse after, even now with the housing, but there's also going to be a retail component in there. And I'm not sure that this small street type thing there is the way to go, but hey, if it works out, fine. But I remember when we tried to do that on San Ramon Valley Boulevard, when we were doing redevelopment money, and it wasn't cheap. That was a high ticket CIP project, and I'd be looking at what alternatives might be there if it's not necessarily Executive Parkway, but we were trying to do things going into the parking lot and other things. What are we trying to do? Programming. Is it going to be in the park section of this or wherever? But again, I think by that time we'll all be in wheelchairs, because there's going to be some housing before that. When I said 330 applies, Scott, what I'm talking about is the direction of the state. The state has just made up their mind. If you're not doing, you know where I'm going. The advisory, I'd be very careful with this. I think this is all part of the direction we've got. The system we have where the developer understands the policies, the directions, the ordinance back through staff. Staff is not waiting to get a project through an advisory committee and the planning commission to look at what they present to the planning commission. This is the way it works. Our contracts, agreements, etc., go through the staff, the city manager, etc., and it works. There was one other thing I was thinking about. The one thing I think we need to start talking about more is less amenities that we used to think of as amenities. The pools, the little rec areas, the little tot areas for kids, like within a homeowners association. Those things get so expensive, and your HOA dues just skyrocket faster than you can imagine. But the amenities we're talking about now, this city walk, parking spaces for your bike sharing is the golden opportunity. Sometimes I think we forget anyone that lives or works in Bishop Ranch has free transit throughout the entire county connection line. And we even have the Go San Ramon system to BART. And these are the kind of things that we can work with where people can rent the electric bikes, the bike sharing program, everything that's over there. And if we can highlight more of that instead of having a pool that somebody say, why in the heck are we spending $150 a week, or sorry, a month on a pool when we can go over to Equinox or 24-hour fitness or up to Club Sport? That's the new world order that's going to be around Roundhouse. But other than that, somebody make a motion and let's get this thing done. Looks like a pretty good project to me. And then, like you said, if you at policy want to go look at an advisory committee, fine, I'll be looking at what the structure is, but I'm not going to put them over the planning department. Go ahead, Scott.
I'll move adoption of resolution number 2022-022, adopting the San Ramon Walking District Plan guidelines.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Perkins, second by Burrows. Any further comment? I think you got to memorialize that number somewhere on the sign. 202222. Something, you know, something cool like that. Get the zero out of there. You don't need that. Well, yeah, you guess you do. 202202. It does have a ring to it.
Does.
Told you about my daughter. I know what her password's going to be. 4321. She was born April 3rd. Okay, if there's no further discussion outside of my rambling, let's do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Armstrong,
Yes.
Councilmember Perkins,
Yes.
Councilmember Zafar,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Burrows,
Yes.
Mayor Hudson.
Yes, 5-0 with excitement. Everybody wants to get going and do it tomorrow. Probably is only cost, man, what the heck, 150 million? This is what we have all been waiting for. Item 11, the city manager comments. Go, Joe.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully I come. So
I shook him up.
I
And the
attended-
city attorney's shaking his head.
It's funny you should mention that, Mayor. I did attend the city managers conference last week with the deputy city manager, Steven Spadowski. Actually was a very, very good conference. And the reason I say it's funny you mention it, they did have a city manager, city attorney relationship session. I did attend that session and found out that Martin and I actually do get along. So we're checking the boxes there and able to play well in the sandbox, I guess. It was very good. Patrick Abera, who is going to be our goal setting facilitator, also gave a very, very good session on the future and innovation. Then there was some work on hybrid workplace models now that were proceeding in the pandemic towards an endemic. And so overall it was very, very informative, and we'll discuss that more when I have opportunity. The police department, public safety complex is moving along. However, it's stalling a little bit. So it looks like our new move-in date for the PD will be not until probably June. There's some supply chain issues and some other, as you know, construction gets these things pop up. So we do have a presentation scheduled, I believe, for next meeting with the PD and the fire district. So you'll be able to ask any questions you have and get an update. It is progressing. They're painting in the police department. They got the walls up. I went through there last week as well. It looks really good. The EOC has all the steel up, and it's starting to really take shape. So though it's being delayed, it's not horribly bad. And then the last thing, if you haven't noticed or you didn't see, that the governor is going to stop the mask mandate next, I believe it's the 15th, next Tuesday or Wednesday. That is for all but unvaccinated, and I anticipate that the county will follow suit. I don't know that. I have not received information from them yet, but that's likely to happen. So that will again trigger a conversation on when you would like to go back to live hybrid meetings. So that's coming. We'll probably have more to discuss on that next council meeting. I'll probably understand with a little better direction from the county health where they're going with it, and so we'll have the ability to discuss how you want to move forward next meeting. That's all for me.
So for clarification, you and Martin played at Sandbox Virtual Reality?
No, I didn't do that.
Okay. Any comments on the comments? Seeing none, let's open public comment. If you have not previously spoken under public comment, item 4, please use the raise your hand feature on Zoom or dial *9 on your telephone. And I don't see any attendees wishing to speak. Going once, going twice. Public comment is closed. Since we didn't have any written then, I don't believe we have any written now. City council members, who wants to be first? Exciting weekend. Go ahead, Sabina.
Right. So part of my question was going to be Joe already answered, but the mask mandates will be going away at the state level and hopefully at the county level. And I know we're at least approved till the first meeting in March to meet virtual, but I think we should start exploring the second meeting in March to start coming back, as the city manager said, hybrid. I think the world has changed in the last 2 years that we've experienced this pandemic, and people have realized that there is an effective way of working by being hybrid. So, hopefully we at the city will also embrace that and give staff or council members an opportunity to join meetings, whatever best suits their work-life balance, if you will. That was just my ask. We were at the Lunar New Year celebration this past weekend at City Center. It was just heartwarming to see the community come together. Really want to give a shout out to Kay Wang and Andy Lee for years of work that they've put in to bring something of a community event like this together, and for the partnership that Sunset Development truly showed with us to put this event. So I feel after seeing, how many people were there, it will probably become an annual event, which is awesome. The mayor did go to chase after sprinkles cupcakes. I don't know if you found any, but that's,
Yep.
I wanted him to eat it, so I wouldn't go and eat one. But yeah, other than that, nothing else to share.
Cool.
Oh, there
Okay.
is a Pongal event happening this Saturday.
Yeah.
Which is going to be in the park, and then followed by a presentation at Doherty Valley Station. And for the Arts Foundation, we also have our first foreign film series coming this Friday. That's
A lot going on. Councilmember Perkins, then Armstrong.
Okay, yeah, so let's see, I'm a member of the MCE Marine Clean Energy Technical Committee, and we had a meeting last week, and the main item on the agenda was a power purchase agreement. That's how we buy power into the future. As we get, we try and buy, project power into the future in 10, 15, and 20-year contracts. And then as we get closer to today, we fill them with shorter term contracts. This particular contract is with a company called Golden Fields Solar. It's a 100 megawatt solar field with a 75 megawatt storage. The 75 megawatt storage can discharge at 75 megawatts for up to 5 hours, or 375 megawatt hours. What this allows them to do is collect solar during, noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, when it's just absolutely flooding the grid, and put it into storage. And then at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, you start discharging for 5 hours. You start at 4:30, and so by 9:30, the power demands are starting to fall off. It will provide 322,000 megawatt hours per year, which is enough for 52,000 customers. It's a 15-year contract, and they'll be online in 2025. This is part of a program that CPUC has directed to all what they call power serving entities. That's MCE. It's required, and all of our future contracts are going to include storage, because we got to find a way to take advantage of solar during the middle of the day and push it to the evening. The other program we discussed was a program related to people who have electric vehicles, Teslas and the others. And it's a program that MCE has developed. They've sent it, they're working with a few hundred customers right now. And what it does is you plug your car in, but MCE controls when you charge, you input when you needed to be fully charged. So if you say, I need to be fully charged by 6:30 in the morning, they will schedule the your system as to when to charge your vehicle as what's most advantageous for MCE, but still meet your requirement for when you need your car. So if, because what's happening now is people get home from work, they plug their car in, and now they're drawing on the grid at 5 and 6 in the evening when everybody else is turning on their electric stove and their TV and their microwave and the oven and all the other, their dryer and washer. And so the power demands in that 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock period are huge. And if we can get the electric cars out of that time period, it's a huge benefit to MCE and the region. So that's what that is. One of the interesting things that Jim Blickenstaff brought up was the 85 foot. And some of you may not be aware, but Jim was party to a lawsuit a few years ago related to Bishop Ranch and City Center. And part of the settlement included agreement to 85-foot buildings. That was part of the agreement. And Jim signed off on. So that's my report. Thank you.
Mark, Pinewood Derby, Mark.
Well, yeah, I did attend the Pinewood Derby with Mayor Hudson. It was a great event this last Saturday for PAC 203. It's one of our San Ramon Cub Scout packs. A lot of fun. We got to participate in judging the cars in 7 different categories, but great to see the kids out there having a lot of fun. What a great day. I'll make a comment there, Councilmember Perkins, on the whole EV charging business. I mean, it's already a feature for Teslas to be able to set what time you want to be able to charge at the time that's most advantageous to you as a customer. So I understand where MCE may want to look at what's most advantageous to them and where that syncs up with what's most advantageous to the customer. I think is maybe something to think about too.
Yeah, that feature does say that if you need your car by 6 in the morning, they will program the discharge to your car so that it is complete by 6 in the morning. And that's part of the thing. And it's been, for the few hundred customers that I'm working with, it's been very successful.
Yeah. Good stuff. There was also a couple crab feeds that I attended in the past week. I don't think we reported on that last time, but I'll report on that now, or I'll report on it again if we haven't already, if we've already said it. But the San Ramon Historic Foundation had their crab feed, well attended, great event, a lot of fun. Saw Mayor Hudson back in the back room there, fishing crab out of a big bucket and throwing it on platters but it was a lot of fun, and I think made a lot of good, got a lot of good donations for the San Ramon Historic Foundation. I also attended one in Danville at the Veterans Hall. They had the American Legion annual crab feed too. It was another fundraiser, well attended, and it was great to just see not only veterans out there, but their friends and everything supporting veterans type activities. And then also the Lunar New Year celebration, as Sabina mentioned, it was fantastic to see all the people out there. It was like the sea of humanity with all the colors and what a great event, and well run, well organized, fantastic costumes, great dancing and performances, and a good representation by our community. It just shows off the diversity of our community and just that whole that tapestry, that fabric of what makes San Ramon such a great place to live. So, and that's all I've got.
Vice Mayor Burrows.
Cool. Nice seeing you all last weekend, except Scott. We miss you there at City Center, but
and me. I thought it was at City Hall.
Oh, you went to City Hall. In any case, so by far, I think that's the biggest crowd I've seen at City Center. It was amazing. Like as Council Member Armstrong mentioned, it's heavily like participated. And I just have to put a plug on our San Ramon Valley Diversity Coalition is actually partnered with for the event. So the hosting, as Council Member Jafar mentioned, Andy and Kay, they did a fantastic job. It's amazing to see such a fantastic event in our neighborhood. And as Council Member Jafar already updated that this coming Saturday, we have this Pongal. Pongal is a harvest festival in India. So there are 2 sessions. One session is at the park in the morning from 10 to 2, where they'll do like food and all that stuff. And then from 3 o'clock to evening, they'll do performance, arts and performance in Dottie Valley Performance Arts Center. So looking forward to see you all there. That's pretty much from my side. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to let that go by too lightly. I think the point you just made, that there were so many people there enjoying themselves, shopping besides looking at the entertainment. The only time I might say there was more was the tree lighting. And the Christmas tree lighting we used to have over at the R1, I think, was about as big as it gets here. But the point is, we're doing this almost every weekend, it seems like, through the fall. So, I mean, I'm really looking forward to this next year of all the different organizations that are putting this. Now we're going all year round. Yeah, Andy Lee, great job. I mean, you're not going to be on the advisory committee. You're the Lunar New Year guy forever. That was a fantastic job. I think I mentioned this before, that when I was back in DC, and we're going back again this time at another transportation issue, Chevron is starting to think about doing green hydrogen. And we're trying to get these things tied to a lot of the transportation issues that we have. We've got to meet some renewable sources. Well, Scott just went through it by 2029 for transportation. And I think we're on target to do it. We can't just do all electric. I think you just heard an explanation of how difficult that will be if by 2029 we start tripling and then re-tripling and then re-tripling the need. The infrastructure is just not there. So we're going to see how green hydrogen works. The other issue that was brought up was 2 things today. And we need to put this in perspective. California has a greenhouse gas emission plan, a scoping plan. And to reduce the emissions, 2/3 of those emissions are through transportation and what Scott Perkins talked about with MCE. It's electrical production. Electricity. So if you're going to take 2/3 of it, how are they going to do the transportation part? You just heard from Scott how they're going to do the electrical part. But transportation is very simple. There's only one thing we can count: vehicle miles traveled. So when you start looking at how you're going to combat climate change, global warming, it's with higher density housing near jobs. This isn't Dave Hudson telling you this. This is the state telling you this. Now, you brought up a point about density and an agreement we have in Bishop Ranch, which is pretty much superseded by legislation that I can't even quote the numbers anymore. They're coming out so fast. But I think the point that both Jim and Joyce are making is nobody likes 7-story buildings. That's what he's trying to tell you. And the reality is you're going to see more of them unless you start changing the attitude coming out of Sacramento, because they have legislated that you get 4 incentives plus 3 extra stories if you're doing 50% affordable housing. So it's getting serious. That's why I get a little leery sometimes when I hear it. I mean, we all know what we want. City Walk was great. Let's just do it today and forget all the housing. Unfortunately, that's what it's going to take to pay for it. That's it for me. I'm looking down at my city attorney going, that's not on the agenda, Dave, but that's it. Hey, by now you should know. Anyway, one last comment from Sabina Zepper. Am I getting closer? Are you going to let me know?
You're awesome. I just wanted to mention when Council Member Sridhar mentioned the Diversity Council, I did want to give a shout out to that. This is Black History Month, and it has been recognized by every US president since 1976. So just paying homage to the Black History Month and for us to recognize and learn about Black history.
Okay, unless you people want to stop me and make a motion with second and a vote to adjourn, this meeting is adjourned to the next meeting, which will be held February 22nd. Thanks for coming out. I think we, go ahead, Scott.
Motion.
Oh, you're just saying bye? Or you want to, okay.
Motion.
Thanks, guys.